Dicey Dungeons is the latest game from developer Terry Cavanaugh, whose previous hits included the very typical Super Hexagon and the inventive VVVVVV, which I hope I got enough V's there. And for this one, we turn to the roguelike genre for yet another take on the effects of RNG, and in this case, the power of dice when it comes to roguelike and procedural and randomized content. So, the story is that we are playing a game show helmed by literally the personification of Lady Luck, essentially my RNG nemesis from all the roguelike games we've played here. And it's up to us to survive each episode in order to put Luck in her place. So, the concept of the game is that you'll choose from one of different characters. Each character has their own unique gear that they'll use, a special ability, and most often some kind of strange modifier or effect that you will have to compensate for while you're playing. Now, the combat system of Dicey Dungeons is pretty interesting. Every gear that you equip or special power requires dice to be used. And if you roll the right number, the right kind of dice, or fill it up with enough value, that skill or gear gets activated. You also have special effects that can destroy dice, lock them, or mess with gear, and the enemies have the same thing. You be an enemy, you'll gain experience, and everything is done through very low numbers to not only simplify the process, but it also makes it easier in terms of balancing and figuring out what you have to do. Now, what makes Dicey Dungeons very fascinating is, of course, the effect of RNG on display here. Because the dice that you roll for each turn determine what you can and can't do, it leads to a lot of dynamics in terms of dice manipulation or being able to plan around that. Taking a lot of gear that is very powerful but requires specific dice rolls can lead to trouble. However, you can also make do with gear that doesn't do a lot of damage, but may have a guaranteed damage no matter what dice you put into it. And when you combine this by the very fact that you have each character having their own set of skills and things to deal with, does give it a lot of legs. And in this regard, Dicey Dungeons reminds me of Slay the Spire. Another thing that I really like about the game is the enemy variety. Every enemy has a completely, again, their own unique set of skills and rules for fighting them. Some enemies are more about doing lots of damage to you if they roll the right numbers. Other ones may perform status effects and manipulate their dice, manipulate your dice. It all is up to them. And it's up to you to figure out the best ways of dealing with them. And you can mix and match your gear to the game's like Tetris kind of UI. Also, I like the aesthetic, and the music is amazing. It's kind of hard to hear it while I'm talking, but it has a very jazzy feel to it. With all that said though, we're going to take a quick Patreon supporter and sponsor break now, and when we come back, I'm going to talk about some of the issues that I have with Dicey Dungeons, and why it may not have as much of a replay value compared to some of the other roguelikes we've seen in the past few years. And now a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom Patreon supporters and sponsors. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. When it comes to the design of Dicey Dungeons, it doesn't feel like this was meant to be the same 80, 100 hour plus in terms of content and variants that we've seen from many of the other roguelikes that have came out. And there are several issues, I think, that may hurt this game if you're expecting a lot, such as with Slay the Spire. The first one that I've noticed is that the dice rolls, at least from the enemy standpoints, may not be completely RNG. Again, without being able to talk to Terry or kind of data mine the game, it's kind of hard to say for sure, but I kind of noticed that dice rolls for the enemies tended to kind of work in their favor a lot. And what I mean is, let's say an enemy has a dice, has a power that requires 2 doubles. or they must roll a 6, and you get the picture. I was noticing that the enemy was consistently getting those values, almost every turn. We also had cases where either this is just, the game acting up, or really how bad my luck is, where I would re-roll a dice and get the exact same value 3 or 4 times in a row. Somebody on the stream did a calculation. I think I had a 4% chance of that happening normally. So either I need to get to Vegas, or there may be some things going on behind the scenes there. But it does not appear to be 100% RNG, as with a game such as Tharsis that came out a few years ago. Now, from a gameplay standpoint, so much of your tactics and options are tied to your class. And in this regard, it almost feels like you're playing, we have 5 or 6 different characters right now, so you're almost playing like 5 or 6 different games with Dicey Dungeons. But because everything is completely up to the RNG of what gear you get, you're not really able to experiment or play around with builds in the same way as a game like Slay the Spires or even Dead Cells. And with that said, if you're hoping for persistence in terms of making the game easier or harder for you, there's not a lot here. Each run is its own unique thing. There is 100% no carryover if you win or lose. The only elements of persistence with Dicey Dungeons are what the game calls episodes. Once you've played through at least a round with each of the main characters, you will unlock their episodes. Think of these as special game modifiers. And it reminds me a little bit of the Ascension system that was devised for Slay the Spire. But in this case, each episode was handmade. And they're designed around specific rules and modifiers tailor-made to that class. And it is a nice way of providing some more value. But again, there's not as much here in terms of variance and replayability, I think, compared to some of our other roguelikes. But with that said, though, that does not make Dicey Dungeons a bad game. I think this is a great kind of middle ground between a smaller or beginner's roguelike and some of the more complicated stuff we've seen over the last few years. The style definitely helps out as well, and this is one of those games that I think could be a great kind of either relaxing or kind of like, I have a few minutes to kill, let me try a match kind of thing. I really hope Terry decides to develop things further, because as with the very best roguelikes, the foundation is definitely here to see more growth and content added on. But the game is still great as it is now. With that said, we're going to wrap up the video here. So I would like to thank Terry for giving me a press key to check this one out. Hopefully we can get him on for a podcast at some point. But if you are interested in this roguelike, be sure to check it out. And if you'd like me to take a look at your game in the future, it doesn't have to be roguelike related, please don't hesitate to get in touch. But check back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. And once again, this has been Dicey Dungeons, and I will see you all next time.